I will talk about an issue that is dear to my heart. It's a series of problems. You want to show me? No. So this is a series of problems that I want to share with you, and that is important to me. So if there are a few things missing, I'm sorry for that, but I'll be delighted to discuss with you on two different aspects of my presentation. I'll talk about two revolutions. Well, the term is a little excessive, but of course, but it's something strong, and it is something that is easily remembered by people. So I'll talk about two revolutions regarding masculinities. We'll discuss a concept looking at our history, and in order to better understand the complexity we're facing, and in order for us to be able to consider some interesting concepts to illustrate this transition period I believe we're in at the moment. So we'll see the slides. But first of all, I wanted to show a picture from Bruegel. As you don't see very well, I'm sorry, but the idea is the following. Before, lives were all mixed up, generations were mixed up, they had no comfort, and I think we can see here a little back, and it's appearing at a window, and it was a little girl who was urinating there. So you had to be quite careful. In Canada, we have to be careful due to the snow falling from the roofs, but here it is something different. So we are referring to the past, and we're getting astray from that past now, and this is just to illustrate this progression over time in history. So we'll talk about mobility. So the idea is to try to understand the different changes in order to understand what's happening. Of course, I am basing my presentation on the works of different specialists who are here, my qualitative research, namely the telephone issue with fathers calling their children, also relationships between men and women, sexual relations and sexuality. Today, young men want everything in a relationship. Before, women wanted everything, and when I'm saying everything, it's all types of communication, of course, sexuality, erotism, leisure, children, everything. And this is something that is very strong. On the other end, there a set of researches, comparative researches, and Gilles mentioned it, and I'm not completely done with this review, but I'm looking at different couples where we interviewed male and women separately in Algeria and in Chile, where I've spent 2 years of my life, and we said that all models are combining. Although we knew there were huge cultural differences, yes, there are discrepancies, and namely in Algeria, a man was saying, my wife is working, but not my problem. To me, it's like if she weren't working, so he was denying, refusing to see his wife's social status. So it was not easy, and the woman had to combine all roles in a very transparent manner, without talking about the situation she was experiencing. But on the other hand, I've met men and women who were ready to share. I went to Yemen, Syria, South Korea, where I stayed for some time, Norway, same thing, and they're all different types of countries. And what's is interesting is that everywhere, every single time I could meet with men who were taking a distance. Of course, others were completely doing the contrary, what I call the defensive males, but others were completely changing in a total metamorphosis, and they were keeping a distance. And they had a very interesting subjectivity, and namely in Sana'a, in Yemen. Men were saying, I'd rather come home early at night than go to Chukat, to a cafe with my colleagues. First, it won't cost me as much money, and I'll take better care of my children. And when they were saying this, it was not necessarily because they were feeling guilty. It was just a testimony. They felt like changing things and didn't know exactly how to do that, and they could not emulate anyone to do that. And in Damas, in Syria, I was highly impressed to see young men. You will tell me it's a symbolic thing, but they were carrying their babies in a bag in front of them. Snugly, they didn't have this behavior. I'm the man, I don't care about the children, and I'm going shopping because I don't want my wife to spend money. So this is what I see throughout the planet, a change, a movement of change, and a distance that is now present in males. So, and I know I'm covering this very fast, but I mean, it gives me a possibility to talk about changes, metamorphosis, and it gives me a possibility to look in other fields as well, to add to this problematics. Although I said I was taking risk, you'll probably find my presentation pretty weird because I'm trying to cover everything, and I'm trying to match different themes, and for 8 years I've been working in environment, and it's not a something that's happening just by chance. I made it 10 minutes left. Okay, I've made interviews with different people, 300 persons, 320 once and 320 at another time in France, and there were men and women, and I was really impressed by this difference in change in relation to environment and a greater awareness on the part of men of the impact of the ways of living on the environment, and I thought it was very interesting. And in 5 years, it was interesting to see how 5 years ago men would say, well, small actions are totally useless to maintain the environment and make it sustainable, and in general, they were not interested by this at all. I heard things like, every little small action is important, and regional actions, local actions, national and international actions are important, and what is important is a combination of everything. What we can call the little nothings of a daily life. And there would be a lot to say on this, but that's it. The first part of my presentation, don't worry, I'll fly through it. This presentation revolves around this idea that in order to study the changes, you need to relocate them in a given context and see that the effects of these changes, movements of women on men. I'm always studying dialectics, that is, the change in the relationship between men and women and men and adults and children, etc. So this is really present, and there is a first revolution coming from this. And with this idea that this first revolution of male will give us the possibility to talk about a mobility of identities. Of course, I could read all I've written on the mobility of identities for you to get a better idea. And as I only have 8 minutes left, because I'm sorry, I was wrong. You get more than that. You have an extra 5 minutes. So, okay. So, back to this notion of mobility of identities. I will say first that we're in the first movement, first revolution of men that gives us the possibility to talk about mobility of identities. Thank you. So this mobility of identities enable a reflection on subjectivity. Oh, we can skip the relationship with norms. Of course, a redefinition of... You can see? Okay. Okay, super. Now I'm totally autonomous, you see? Even in relation to technology. Well, so you can question yourself on the conditions to go from one society to another that is... looking at those transformations give us the possibility to analyze the society we're tending to become, and we are progressing towards another society thanks to this mobility of identities. And here I am. So the idea is that this mobility of identities... I've lost my key. Okay, thank you. So, of course, I will skip through all of this because you've mentioned it. It's a society that is characterized by a loss of legitimacy of patriarchate after getting balance and inequality of male and female rights and legal transformation, the influence of the gay culture. But of course, patriarchal patterns are continuing, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It generates an overlapping of the contemporary models and strains between those models, as well as defensive masculinities. So that's what we find all over the planet. And so we see a passage of male monoculture, feminine monoculture, and affiliation is not the exclusive reference to fatherhood,